Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prasharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasachadeshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to the 12th annual Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Africa Conference, held in honor of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My name is Dwarka Devi Dasi, and I will be your host for the event. BBT Africa hosts these annual conferences with the aim of increasing access and expanding the footprint of book distribution on the African continent. This year marks the 125th appearance anniversary of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. His Holiness Advaita Swami will share his message on this historic milestone, followed by a video tribute entitled, "This is My Request." Advaita Maharaj is an editor, writer, publisher, author, and teacher. He served as an editor or assistant editor for nearly all the books of Srila Prabhupada that has been published during Srila Prabhupada's lifetime. He is the author of Vanity Karma and serves as the Emeritus Trustee for BBT Africa. Maharaj, welcome. It is wonderful to have you join us.
Thank you very much, Yangana. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripasindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada wrote books meant to create a revolution in the misdirected lives of the people of the world. To carry out his wishes, the BBT must be ready when needed to act in revolutionary ways. This doesn't mean we must work at overthrowing governments, but it does mean that for the service of Krishna, we should always be ready for extraordinary transformations in our hearts and lives, and for bold plans and actions from the BBT itself, and for the whole Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Prabhupada's books offer the world the most essential message, the message of Krishna consciousness. Every night, Srila Prabhupada absorbed himself in the words of books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He thought deeply and worked to get across the meaning of those books, the meaning of those words to the modern world, to us. Now it's up to us to put what Srila Prabhupada wrote into people's hands and lives. Krishna is known as Uttama Shloka, the Supreme Person described in transcendental verses, in words beyond the darkness of ignorance. Yat Uttama Shloka Gunanuvarnanam. The words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna and received through the line of pure devotees are non-different from Krishna himself. So when those words enter the heart, one's relationship with Krishna, lost and forgotten, begins to reappear. Those words act to purify our hearts, like autumn rains falling on muddy pools. Srila Prabhupada wrote, "It is said that a single pure devotee of the Lord can deliver all the fallen souls of the world." Such a devotee, he wrote, can not only deliver himself from the clutches of Maya, or illusion, but can deliver the whole world by his pure and empowered devotional strength. Who can do this? A true representative of the Lord, he wrote, like Narada, Shukadev Goswami, Lord Chaitanya, the six Goswamis, and later Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, etc. What a wonderful use of the word, etc. Following in the same line of pure devotees, Srila Prabhupada wrote books that have the power to deliver any fortunate person who reads them. And we can have the good fortune to assist him and thereby transform our own lives and the lives of others. A revolution in consciousness. As today's conference begins, 125 years after Srila Prabhupada's appearance, I look forward to hearing about what Srila Prabhupada's followers in Africa are achieving and are inspired to achieve to move that revolution forward. Hare Krishna.
Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathannitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam.
In the early 20th century, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who ordered his disciples to preach Krishna consciousness around the world. He especially desired to distribute Krishna-conscious literature in the Western countries. His disciple, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, took this order as his very life.
In 1944, he single-handedly begins publishing and distributing Back to Godhead, a fortnightly. But often he leaves Vrindavan to print his magazine and books in nearby Delhi. Traveling takes time and tolerance, but Bhaktivedanta Swami accepts it as part of his spiritual mission to broadcast devotional service to Lord Krishna. In Delhi, Bhaktivedanta Swami personally distributes copies of Back to Godhead, and with small donations, struggles to maintain the publication. He regularly sees Surendra Kumar Jain, a printer.
It was somewhere in the month of February 1956 that I first met Prabhupada. He came to my press for getting the magazine printed, Back to Godhead. I found that it was not very easy for him to collect money. He would come to the press practically every day, and after the printing was done, he would do everything himself. But he was a dedicated person, a very committed person. And at the times when he was not in a position to pay the bills, I would ask him, "Why are you running this? Why don't you stop it?" He would say, "No, it is my mission. And one day, Surendra Kumar, you will see that I will succeed in my mission."
By 1964, Bhaktivedanta Swami completes 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri lauds his accomplishment and recommends his books for placement in India's public libraries.
Festival takes place.
Wherever Srila Prabhupada is, he continues to write prolifically. Rising long before dawn, he spends hours translating and commenting on original Sanskrit and Bengali texts.
Or sometimes they wash their hands and feet before entering the temple.
His most significant contribution is his books. Professors from dozens of major universities use them as standard texts and write appreciative reviews.
The narrations concerning the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, are the oldest writings known to man. Over generations, they have influenced civilizations in both the East and the West. Now, under Srila Prabhupada's guidance, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust has become the world's largest publisher and distributor of these spiritual classics. Srila Prabhupada himself is the author of all of the books. He has been acclaimed as the world's most distinguished scholar and teacher of Vedic philosophy and culture.
Established in 1972, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust exclusively publishes Srila Prabhupada's works. It becomes the world's largest distributor of books in the field of Indian religion and philosophy. For Srila Prabhupada, the transcendental knowledge in these books forms the basis of the Hare Krishna movement.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
You have to simply take instruction from Guru, and if we execute that to our heart and soul, that is success. That is practical. I have no personal qualification, but I simply tried to satisfy my Guru, that's all. My Guru Maharaj asked me that if you get some money, you print books. So, there was a private meeting talking, some of my important God brothers also there, it was in Radhakunda. So, Guru Maharaj was speaking to me that since we have got this Bhagavajar and marble temple, there has been so many dissensions. And everyone is thinking, we'll occupy this room or that room, that room. I wish therefore to sell this temple and the marble and print some book. Yes. So I took up this promise Mao that he's very fond of books. And he told me personally that if you get some money, print books. Therefore I am stressing on this point. Where is book? Where is book? Where is book? So kindly help me. This is my request. Print as many books in as many languages and distribute throughout the whole world. Then Krishna consciousness movement will automatically increase.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you, Jai Advaita Maharaj, for sharing the glory and mercy of Srila Prabhupada. I'd now like to welcome His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Swami. Bhakti Caitanya Swami is a teacher and author. He is the chairman of ISKCON's governing body and GBC for Southern Africa. Maharaj recently taught the Bhakti Shastri degree program online to devotees in more than 30 countries due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this year, over 400 students completed the program, which was the largest graduation of students obtaining their Bhakti Shastri degree in a single sitting. Maharaj, welcome. Thank you so much for allowing us your association.
Hare Krishna, devotees. I'm very happy to be with you all on this wonderful, wonderful occasion. I'm in the garden here in our temple at ISKCON Midrand. It's a little awkward, but anyway, let us do what we can. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I hope you can hear me okay. I hope you can see me okay. So yes, again, I'm very happy to be participating in this wonderful occasion, the 12th annual BBT Africa Conference. I'd like to welcome everyone. Book distribution, of course, was Srila Prabhupada's prime preaching program. There are many ways of preaching Krishna consciousness, so many ways. You can hear the kirtan going on perhaps in the background. It's a Govardhan Puja celebration. So kirtan is one of the wonderful ways of spreading Krishna consciousness. Then festivals, then prasadam, then just speaking to people. These are all wonderful ways of presenting Krishna consciousness and spreading Krishna consciousness. And they're all approved by Srila Prabhupada. However, I think we all know very well that of all these different wonderful programs for giving Krishna consciousness for people and spreading the movement of Krishna consciousness, that which Srila Prabhupada gave the greatest emphasis to was the distribution of his literature. If you know the story, you would know that Srila Prabhupada initially was distributing Back to Godhead magazine. And for quite some time, like a year or a few years, he was focusing on that. But then he was given the idea of printing hardbound books because they last. On one hand, they last much longer than a magazine. On the other hand, you can put a whole lot more information into a hardbound book than you can into a magazine. So Srila Prabhupada, when he got that inspiration, he really focused on producing his books in Krishna consciousness and distributing his books. I'm currently doing a seminar most evening, Monday to Friday at least, of reading the Prabhupada Lilamrita. It's really wonderful. It's amazing, actually. But one thing I've noticed is that now, at least in our reading, Srila Prabhupada has arrived in America, and he's arrived in New York, and he's now in 26 Second Avenue. And I've noticed that whoever Prabhupada would meet, he would get them to take a set of his Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada emphasized this so much, and we as his followers, his servants, following in his footsteps, we must also do the same thing. Really place the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books into the position of first priority, main priority in our activities in this movement. So thank you all for coming, tuning in, and participating in this 12th annual BBT conference for Africa. Thank you very much. I welcome all of you, and I appeal to all of you that also please follow in Prabhupada's footsteps by always, whatever situation you're in, wherever you are, try to find ways to present Srila Prabhupada's books. He will be the most pleased he could be with you. In this way, you'll progress, you'll be very happy, and this movement will spread more and more all over the world. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's book distribution ki jai. Go Premanandi. Haribol.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. That was really inspiring. Before we begin our next session, I'd like to call on our last two speakers before we begin session 1. And our last two speakers is His Grace Govardhan Das and His Grace Mukundangri Das. Welcome. His Grace Govardhan Das is an international BBT trustee, chairman of the Back to Godhead board, and a GBC for Southern Africa. Welcome, Govardhan Prabhu. His Grace Mukundangri Das is a trustee and executive director at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Africa division. He is also the head of environment and sustainability in ISKCON South Africa. Welcome, Govardhan Mukundangri Prabhu. Govardhan Prabhu will provide an overview about the work of the BBT, followed by Mukundangri Prabhu, who will share the conference theme, objectives, and outcomes of the conference. Over to you, Govardhan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Glories to Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjanan Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So Hare Krishna, my obeisances to all, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yes, the BBT at work. Once Srila Prabhupada had said that although I am practically on my path of death, still I cannot forget about my publications. I wish that if I live or die, that you should take very serious care for my publications. Then Srila Prabhupada said, when one book is published, I feel I've conquered an empire. When a publication in any language is made, it enlivens me 100 times. So we see that before Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he prepared himself. By 1962, Srila Prabhupada had done the first canto of Bhagavatam. By 1963, the second canto. By 1965, the third canto. It was evident that there was a particular urgency in Srila Prabhupada. So the BBT today carries that spirit, that urgent spirit that Srila Prabhupada infused in his followers. Actually, Srila Prabhupada once said that, as far as I know, as Prabhupada is speaking, the Ramakrishna Mission has its own press, the Aravinda Ashram has its own press, the Theosophical Society has its own press, the Bible Society has its own press. So why should ISKCON not have its own organization? So when some German devotees started a press in 1969, they named it the Radha Press. Srila Prabhupada was very, very pleased. She said that Radharani is the topmost servitor of Krishna. And the printing machine is the best medium. The printing machine is the best medium for serving Krishna. And that the press is the representative of Srimati Radharani. Then by 1972, Srila Prabhupada formed the BBT. He injected this urgency we are talking about. We see how the Chaitanya Charitamrita was done in hardly 2 months. And till this day, devotees serving in the BBT feel that they are on a transcendental treadmill. Here we are today at the 12th BBT Africa Conference in the year, the 125th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's appearance in this world. On the eve of the 50th anniversary of the BBT's registration in 1972, Srila Prabhupada started BTG in 1944. It remains in print today. We have the Bhaktivedanta archives preserving Srila Prabhupada's legacy. We have a global copyrights office. We have a global BBT network, divisions that cover every language on the earth. So BBT is working. BBTs are working to produce Chinese books, Arabic books, Amharic books, Creole books. You see, all the previous acharyas in our line, they were unselfish servants. They desired this Raja Vidya Raja Guyam, the king of knowledge and the greatest of all secrets, should be shared with every person on the planet. In Srila Prabhupada's letter of 1956, before he came to the West, he wrote it to the President of the Indian Union, where he said, "I am therefore very eager to broadcast this secret." Of course, BBT makes this possible. Each book allows Krishna to do his magic, and many of us know we are ourselves recipients of that mercy. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta himself once said that in the future, the books will be in the language of the birds and the beasts. So when that day comes, BBT will be in readiness to publish books in the languages of the birds and the beast. So the highlight of the African BBT work this year is the publication of the isiZulu Bhagavad Gita. We are very excited about that. The BBTs all over the world are very hard at work in the mood of sharing, in the mood of gratitude, in the mood of service. And we know for sure that books are our heritage. It's the most valuable work. So I look forward today to the deliberations that better sharpens our preparedness to publish, translate, and distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Govardhan Prabhu. Thank you to Divyangana and all our esteemed guests, Sanbonani, Dumelang, Goeiemiddag, Jambo, Bonjour, Sanbingelela Nonke. We welcome you to the 12th annual BBT Africa Conference. This is a special event on the African calendar, not just the BBT calendar. And the reason why these conferences are so special for us all is that the BBT Africa Conference is the one place in a year where leaders of Sankirtan from across the continent gather under one roof to discuss where are we now with our Sankirtan mission on the continent, and how are we going to take this mission forward. So it's special in that regard. For over a decade, BBT Africa has strived to bring books from our Gaudiya Vaishnav tradition to the diverse and beautiful people of our continent. We have been at the forefront of promoting discussion from the Vedic point of view through our Bhaktivedanta Swami lecture series. So today we sit here gathered for this 12th annual conference. And I've been tasked to share with you what the theme of this conference is. This year's theme, after some deliberation and consideration, we said the theme should be the African story. Now, why is that important? You see, through every endeavor of the BBT, through triumphs and struggles that we have encountered, behind all of that, there's always a story of people, a story of devotees, a story of communities trying to share the message of Krishna consciousness and trying to receive the message of Krishna consciousness. So we have availed this platform, this 12th annual conference, to discuss these stories. And these stories will help bring to light where we are and exactly what we need to do to chart the way forward. So I want to share with you a few important graphics and statistics that will hopefully help to contextualize what we are working towards in this conference. So on this next slide, our first graphic, which speaks about the present and the future of Africa. The next slide. Let's go to the next slide. So as we're waiting for our graphics to come up nicely, one of the things that we want to show is how the continent is set to grow with regards to population and certain statistics we need to bear in mind as we consider how we are going to plan and organize ourselves for book distribution in the future. On screen here are some of the population numbers from the top 10 most populous countries on the continent. As you can see, Nigeria tops the continent with just under 180 million people. And as you go through the list, you can see the various other countries. And in our own country, South Africa, we have a population of just under 60 million. Then I'd like to show you this next graphic, which speaks to how this population number will grow over the next 30 years. So over the next 30 years, the United Nations projects that 50% of the population growth on our planet will come predominantly from countries based on the African continent. Some of these countries include countries such as Nigeria, they include Ethiopia, they include South Africa. All of these are countries that we as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness have a footprint in. Of that population growth, one key statistic, as will be shown on our next graphic, is that 600 million people of the 1 billion people that are projected to be living in the borders of our continent will be youth. So as we can see here, South Africa has the largest, or will have the largest, youth population on the planet. 600 million youth to be exact. And by youth, we are speaking of those who are under the age of 25, as this United Nations graphic points out here. How are these youth going to be reached? If we move to our next graphic here, which speaks to how the youth consume media and how they interact with the world, how they get their information, Africa has one of the fastest growing rates of digital connectivity on the planet. And with the rising number of youth on the continent, we are finding that the continent is getting ever more connected with each other. On our next graphic here, we will see that the most digitally connected country on the continent is Nigeria, followed by Egypt, Kenya. In South Africa, you have connectivity of round about 20% to 40% of the population. What does this mean for us as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness and the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust? As you'll see here on our next slide, which shows ISKCON's footprint on the continent, we find that we have presence in 16 countries on our continent. Now, with the information that has been shared with the audience, we have to ask ourselves now, how do we become prepared to meet the demand and the needs of the future? We have seen the growth in population. We've seen specifically the growth in youth population, and we see the trends towards more digital connectedness. So here's the most important part of this tone-setting opening, and that is in our next slide over here. The most important aspect that we need to consider is this, is the story of the people that we serve on our African continent. We need to put the people of the continent at the forefront, those who are dedicated to promoting and distributing the message of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada to the masses of this continent. So we have a very powerful session lined up for you during this conference. The first session speaking about African opportunities and outreach. The second session will speak about the preaching paradigm. How do we reach the African masses? And have we actually fallen short of reaching the indigenous African populations in which we find ourselves in? And lastly, our third session for today will ask the question, what is the difficulty with French? This has been a decade-long question that the African BBT, together with other branches of the BBT, have sought to answer. Yet we are still in search for a conclusive resolution forward. What we will try to unpack today is where we are with the French book issue and how we can chart a decisive way forward. So this conference will be impactful. This conference will be inspiring. This conference will conjure hope. But most of all, what we want from each and every single person engaging in this conference with us today is to spark discussion, is to spark the inspiration to want to organize ourselves. And the only way we can begin to organize ourselves is when we get together at a table and discuss the ideas ahead. Thank you very much. We look forward to having your participation throughout the conference. And now I'll hand over to our Master of Ceremonies, Divyanana. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Govardhan and Mukundangri Prabhus. This definitely sets the tone for today's proceedings. With opportunities come challenges in book distribution. The conference program has therefore been designed to include specific topics that highlight some of these challenges and to discuss possible solutions. The first session, Africa's Opportunities, Innovation in Outreach, will be facilitated by His Grace Aghari Krishna Dasa. Aghari Krishna Prabhu, under the guidance of his spiritual master, embarked on a full-time participation in Srila Prabhupada's mission for establishing and growing Krishna-conscious farm communities. In this session, panelists will discuss Africa's key opportunities for outreach and the innovation that is taking place in countries across Africa. Welcome, Aghari Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, sorry about that. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored to be here. Can you hear me? Thank you so much. Yes, so I will be facilitating this first session. I was trying to do it without this beanie on, but my body hasn't quite adapted to the winter of the Northern Hemisphere. So I'm still very much African, even though I'm based in Gittinagri here in the northeastern part of the US. So we will be discussing a very important topic, and that is innovation, how to utilize innovation in African outreach. So in this session, we'll be joined by highly esteemed book distributors and ambassadors for BBT Africa. And so that is from South Africa, we'll be joined by His Grace Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu. From Hare Krishna Prabhu, it's so good to see you after so long. We'll also be joined from Kenya, East Africa, Her Grace Dwarka Vasini Devi. Hare Krishna. I think you're muted.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Good
Krishna.
to see you, Aghari Prabhu.
It's so good to see you too. It's been so long.
And my pranams to all those devotees who are present.
Yeah. And we'll also be joined by His Grace Prema Vilas Prabhu from Mauritius.
Hare Krishna to all the devotees.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for joining us. It was my first time meeting you.
Pleasure.
I didn't get a chance to, I did attend the conference in Ghana, but I don't know if you attended that one in 2014.
No.
Yeah, okay.
No,
but it certainly is a pleasure to meet you, Prabhu.
Same, pleasure, same.
So we will begin by watching a video from His Grace Mahaprasad Prabhu, and he brings up very important questions and perspectives on this topic. So if you can play that video, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. In this session, I wanted to cover three areas. The first one is, what is the opportunity we have within Africa to disseminate Krishna consciousness? The second one is, what's our immediate challenge? How can we be more impactful in distributing books throughout the continent? A third one is, what is our long-term challenge to create an innovative and sustainable outreach program? As far as the first one is concerned, we all know after Asia, Africa has the highest population in the world. Nearly 1 billion people live within Africa. And as far as UNESCO is concerned, over 2.2 billion people will be living over the next 40 years within Africa. And at the same time, 640 million people have access to mobile phone. And if you take the example of Nigeria, for instance, we have something in the region of 153 million people. They have internet access. And above all, the world's highest number of younger population under the age of 25, they all reside within Africa. So communication is not going to be a problem. But what is our immediate challenge? As far as I'm concerned, I see two areas. One is that we lack a systematic continental level organizational structure to be able to distribute books. The second one is a lack of sufficient support to our book distributors. As far as organization is concerned, Srila Prabhupada always told us it's always important to be organized and to use our intelligence in order to be effective in distributing Krishna consciousness throughout the world. And as far as support is concerned, instead of relying on our own temple devotees, it's always important to encourage our congregation, Namahata members, Bhakti Vriksha members to participate in the book distribution, to identify a spot for them for the book distribution, to build a spot for them, to get permission for the spot for them, to take care of the transport needs, their prasadam need, and their record management, the finance management, and also to hold a festival to encourage them. So we recently applied this systematic approach in Ghana, within Ghana 6 months ago. It seems to be working really, really well. You know, the devotees there are actually distributing more and more books on a weekly basis, trying to adapt this kind of approach. So at the same time, what is our long-term challenge that we have? I see two areas. The first one is the language barrier. The second one is illiteracy in Africa. If we take Nigeria, we have over 500 different kind of languages. In Ethiopia, we have over 86 different kind of languages. So distributing English book only is not going to be effective. Therefore, we have to invest our energy to translate as many books as possible in different African languages. As far as illiteracy is concerned, take the example of North, South, East, West, and Central. I'm talking about Egypt, South Africa, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Congo. Just within these 5 countries, we have over 163 million illiterates. Therefore, distributing books to this population is not going to be effective. Therefore, we have to come up with audio books of Srila Prabhupada so that this population can also hear the message of Srila Prabhupada. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mahaprasad Prabhu. So that was quite a chunk of information Mahaprasad Prabhu presented us with. But the first question he posed was, what are the underutilized opportunities in distributing Prabhupada's books in Africa more widely? So while looking into this topic, particularly with internet access in Africa, if you look at last year's stats, about 43% of Africans. So the continent has currently about 1.3 billion people. So 43% of them have access to the internet. And with Facebook's free basics program, so basically you can access certain websites which go through Facebook service, but it's mainly like, Facebook's applications. It actually gives you free access to the internet. And Facebook has about, on the African continent, 42% of internet users, which is 139 million persons. So my question to you is, based on your extensive experience, what opportunities are underutilized, especially in reaching persons on mobile phone. Maybe we can begin with you, Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu.
Well, Hare Krishna, I think there's great opportunity for this. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we thought it's the end of the Sankirtan movement. How will we ever distribute books again? But Vaisheshekar Prabhu has come in and has taught us this different way of how we can preach online and how we can distribute books online. So we followed Vaisheshekar Prabhu's lead here in South Africa by having calling parties and distributing books over the phone and over the internet. But one of our successes was takealot.com. Now, for those that don't know takealot.com, it's like the Amazon.com here in South Africa. And over this last 10 months, we've distributed 89 Bhagavad Gitas online to persons or customers who would never walk into a temple, but they came onto this online platform, and it's sold at more than double the price than what you can buy it at the temple. So it's a great opportunity. It's definitely the way to go, online sales.
Well, that is a success. Sorry, I'm just having some feedback issues here. Dwarka Vasini Devi, are there any success stories in the Bhadra Purnima campaign that you might have done?
Bhadra Purnima was quite different this year because we didn't have Bhagavatam sets. We couldn't order from India, and we didn't have, but we did have orders. So what we did was take orders, and that's what we've counted, and we'll supply them as soon as we get our stock back. So there was that. It was a little, bit of a letdown, but we had to do it the other way. Yeah, we took the orders first, and we'll give them later.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like any opportunities that you've seen, like connecting with persons, distributing books on online platforms?
Unfortunately not. I'm more of an old school where I like to meet people. I like to see them. I like to give them the book, so I get that personal feedback. I'm more of that. Yes, online works, but we didn't go that way. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. But there are devotees who've been going to the malls and distributing books. Again, it's one-to-one. But it is a place where we want to try and see if it will work in Kenya.
And then during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, I don't know what the lockdown situation was in Kenya, but how did you continue with book distribution?
Unfortunately, we didn't.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it was quite peaceful, I would say. There wasn't much happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from your side, Prabhu, Prema Vilas Prabhu?
Yes, I think in Mauritius, we are using a mix of both systems. Like sometimes there are devotees who are doing very well on the online side. I mean, they connect to people through social media or other platforms, and then we are able to convey these books to these people. We don't have such a big delivery system, but mostly we are going the traditional ways where we have to approach people and try to convince them to take books, and this works very well here. Trying to get in touch with people, this works very well because these people not only want a book, but they have other questions and they are inquisitive and they want to participate in many other kinds of activities. So we have a mixture of both system. I would like to add something that in my experience, recent experience, I see that we we are right to say that we have to engage the devotees who are the members of the congregation. And one thing that is working, starting to work here in Mauritius is corporate preaching, corporate outreach, where we devotees who are working in some organization or some companies, they are trying to involve their colleagues or other people that are working in the organization to get a book, Bhagavad Gita, or a Science of Self-Realization. And this looks like quite a good opportunity for us here in Mauritius. So this is it for me.
So something which has taken off on the point of corporate outreach is featuring an animal during a meeting. So like to make it more interesting. So, you know, you see your work colleagues all the time, and then all of a sudden you'll just see a cow or a lemur, and then it just features in the meeting. So I don't know if something like that could be used in terms of corporate outreach, where, you know, you feature some interesting person, you know, in a meeting, because people are just meeting via Zoom so much. So could you, you know, have a campaign, something like that, in terms of corporate outreach?
I mean, if we have a team working, especially on the corporate outreach, this might be some ideas. But really, we're thinking about the people who already working there, devotees who are already working there, and how to create like some kind of interaction with the people who can help getting people who are on the top in the corporate ladder, get them on board, and then involve them in trying to present the more moral side of our philosophy and the more our pious side of our philosophy, or things like this, and cultivate these people who, like in the midterm or short or midterm, they can help us with creating some campaign. It can take many shapes and forms, but like each organization have their own policies, but it's something that we're starting here, and we still have to find the right strategies. But it is something that has it's just one of the greatest opportunities, I think, in Mauritius for the moment.
If I may say something, Aghari Prabhu, before we go into the strategies, we also need to know what are the needs and interests and concerns of the people. We can't just say cooperate, or we can't just say this or that. We also need to know what kind of an audience we're targeting. So like for the youth, there will be a different type of approach. And for others, there'll be another approach. So we need to first come up with the needs, interests, and concerns of the people. And accordingly, then we can come up with strategies for them. And before the conference, I was actually trying to put up a presentation for all this, but I kind of went down with a fever, so I didn't finish my presentation. But it was on that we need to know what people are looking for. Africa is very unique. There was once, I remember, His Holiness Chedvaita Swami did this whole presentation where he showed the whole world can fit into Africa. So Africa is very, very strong. So why are we not the leaders in book distribution? Where are we going wrong? We're doing so much, but why isn't it been shown, or where are we lacking? So first we have to strategize. We have to know what are the needs of our people. What are they looking for? You know, when we are out there distributing books, what are their concerns? If I give a book to somebody, the first question he will ask me is, Are you trying to change me? Are you trying to convert me? That's the word. Are you trying to convert me? Doesn't want to know what the book is about, but are you there to convert me? You see, so what are their concerns and what are their interests? Like the youth, they will accept, oh, this is from the East. Yes, we want it and all that. There's so much. So how to approach them as well? So innovation comes after we know what they need, and then we can strategize accordingly and give them what they are looking for. And I guess that way we'll do more. And one thing that I would like to say is where we are lacking as ISKCON is we don't share the same thoughts, like the book distributors and the temple leaders don't share the same thoughts on books. So we have one group that's, kind of pushing book distribution, but then we have somebody who's not interested, and same in the same temple. So how do you go about that? Because we also have our internal challenges. Yeah. So we have to sort all this up, and I think there'll be a time when Africa will be on top. And that's where we have to be. That's where we deserve to be. No matter what platform you use, you can use the media. Yes, it's very enticing. You can use whatever way of distributing books as long as the book goes out.
Well, thank you so much for that. So on that point of the needs, interests, and concerns, in your case, Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu, how have you identified, the specifically say during COVID, how did you distill, the interests of persons, being online, and now you also have a concern that these lockdowns are also going to restrict your distribution channels. So how did you come up with that strategy? Or first of all, how did you go about identifying those needs, interests, and concerns, and then formulate a strategy that worked?
Well, we understand the need. We understand the need that Srila Prabhupada's books are the panacea of this world. It's the only medicine of this world to cure us from our material disease. So how do we get this medication all across the African continent? That is our concern. So we have to try different avenues. Unfortunately, we are a very small group of devotees that are really interested in book distribution. Most devotees are very comfortable in their practice, and they don't see the real need. And I was one of those devotees as well. I didn't see the or understand the need. But then you think about it, that we're gaining so much of mercy. And if we really want Prabhupada's mercy to be extended to us, then we have to do something for his mission. And then you extend yourself. Okay, we can do this. And then you try to influence other devotees as well. But please, let's do this together. Let's come up with different innovative ways to distribute Prabhupada's books. Yes, the best way is always the personal way. But what happens if we can't do it in the personal way? Let's try some other avenues. One of the avenues we have here in South Africa, especially in Durban, we have the Smart Box campaign. And we have just under 50 smart boxes around the province, and around the city rather. And those 50 smart boxes are doing 10 to 15 books a week rather, 10 to 15 books a week. So it's a really powerful means of how can we do it. So we have the online platform, we have the monthly Sankirtan, we have the smart box campaign, and so many different strategies we can come up with in order to distribute books. Like last Saturday in Durban, we had our first monthly Sankirtan festival since the pandemic. So this is a Sankirtan festival that was in person. It was so nice to receive the devotees again, to see the devotees again, because the temple has been in a lockdown or slight lockdown. and to be with everyone again, and in a very safe way, go out to different locations. And just in, just under 2 hours, the devotees distributed 92 books for just over 3,000 rands in just 2 hours time. So if we can have more monthly Sankirtan festivals, we can have more festivals of coming together and going out and distributing Prabhupada's books, yes, we're getting the cure of the material disease out there. Srila Prabhupada's transcendental literature. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, Prema Vilas Prabhu, what do you think of Mother Dwarka Vasini Devi's point on addressing concerns, particularly of different audiences, like say the older audience, they have a need for security and feel like you're not changing their identity, so you have to address them in that specific way. So, how do you go about addressing that? At the same time, we want to go about utilizing the opportunities, specifically the fact that so many Africans have mobile phones. So how do you actually go about addressing these concerns, but at the same time moving forward? Of course, there's the other concern that, which is a perennial point in our society, that we don't have so many persons participating in book distribution. However, those who are participating, they still met with this challenge of assuring people that Krishna consciousness is really, as Prabhupada puts it, that it's the energy of the soul. We're not really trying to convert you, but just bring out what is naturally there.
Yes, I totally agree with her that before we get into the books, we have to know about the what, how, when, and who. We have to address these issues, like who are we preaching to, what kind of books that are more appropriate for them. I mean, just the print cover of a book can make a huge difference. The cover itself, we are distributing the science of self-realization. We have 2 different covers, and to like convince someone, one with a very abstract cover with a abstract picture with a and the other one which has the picture of Srila Prabhupada on it. And so, like my experience is that the one with the abstract cover, it is quite difficult to it moves very very slowly when you're distributing it. While the other one with the cover having Srila Prabhupada on it, the moment people look at this picture itself, which is quite appealing of a person, of a sage, of a sadhu, so it becomes easier to get it across. So I think that these issues are very, very important to take into consideration. Now in Mauritius, we see that it is a multicultural country, and people are quite even from different cultural backgrounds, and they are used to see the activities of other groups, and so they're quite open. So we don't get so much of a barrier to get the books across, but still we have to take into consideration, like we don't want to push people to do something that they don't want to do by themselves. And actually the approach of the devotee also is, who is doing the distribution, is very, very important. So I think these are some of my thoughts. And even though like we are not into have a proper strategy to distribute books using applications or the social media or the online medium, but I think that this will be one of the things that we have to like master if we want to increase books substantially in the future, because the online medium is a future for everyone. So I think this is something that we have to look into.
Thank you. So yeah, we will tackle that point. I just want to come back to Dwarka Vasini Devi about just the concerns. Prema Vilas Prabhu raised an important point that the covers are an obstacle. So when you look at the success of the Bhadra Purnima and the data that was published on the number of sets that went out in India, one could make the argument that, oh, okay, well, India, although it's like very diverse, there's so many languages, but the cultures are like held within one system, and that is the Vedas, you know. So like from a theistic point of view, it's like very connected. Whereas you look at cultures in Africa, there hasn't been, like in the history of Africa, you know, it was colonized by different places and by different European nations. But the cultures, there wasn't like this continental conqueror to like unify everything, like as was done in China, you know, with some of those dynasties. So there's a lot of diversity. So when you present a cover in India, people can like relate to that. Different. It doesn't matter what different part of India you are in. But then in Africa, if you present one cover in East Africa and then you present another cover in Southern Africa, you can actually get different reactions and people just feeling concerned. So the point I'm trying to raise is that would it be worthwhile to invest in, because you mentioned that most of your books you order them from India, so most of the books that are distributed in Africa, they aren't like printed on the African continent with our own presses where we can like control the covers. They're coming off another order, a major order, and you know that's the cover they're going with. So in other words, is there an opportunity for actually having more control over the covers on a local basis so that you can actually address that up front? Because it seems to be an immediate challenge to increasing outreach.
So are you asking if the covers are an obstacle to distribute more books, or are you asking that should we change the covers since we are in Africa? What's the question? I didn't get your question.
Right, yeah. So my question is there an opportunity for having more control, local control over the covers? That's my first question. Like you as...
For me, as a book distributor, I don't have any issues with the covers anymore because it's the way you present. And more than the cover, it's the title of the book. I feel the titles are so perfect. We have some best titles. If you see our books, Matchless Gift, Coming Back, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, Message of Godhead. You know, these are really unique titles. You don't see such words used anywhere else. So they're such beautiful titles, I wouldn't change them for anything. Yes, we can have a few covers changed, because when you put maybe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or some like Beyond Birth and Death has a skull. And in Africa, we know the skull represents something different, but the meaning of that skull being there with a flower coming out is completely different depicted in the book. Now, when you're out there and you're distributing and you can explain that to them, then they take it. So it's again up to the distributor to know how to present the book. Then we have Civilization and Transcendence, where we have Krishna himself, and then there is a cow. And this question usually comes, do you worship the cow? Now, I take that opportunity to to them that, look, Indians don't worship cows or Hindus don't worship cows. All they do is respect the cow. And then starts another thing that, okay, if you're respecting a cow, why do you respect? Because she's a mother. At least now you get the opportunity of preaching vegetarianism. If nothing, even if leave Krishna consciousness aside, but at least you're trying to say, look, this is an animal where you're drinking her milk, and at the end of the day, you also eat her up. That's not fair. So there's so many opportunities that are there just with the present covers. We can make them African, but I feel whatever is there, utilize it. It's honestly, it's up to the distributors to know how to present the books. And especially coming back is wonderful, because the first question I always get asked is, who's coming back? Is it Jesus? And there starts a conversation again. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's quite clear that some concerns can be addressed through education and just increased experience. And then while other concerns are a bit more systemic and they relate to structure. So you raised the point of the perennial problem that you don't have so many participants in book distribution. The Sanket full-time devotees out doing in-person book distribution are very few in number. And then there's also not so many persons, as Prema Vilas Prabhu raised, is that, there's not so many persons utilizing the online opportunities. So it just seems like the common thread that's running through this is education and skill. So,
if I may add, Aghari, sorry, Aghari, coming to not having many devotees doing Sankirtan, last year during marathon in Kisumu, we have our ISKCON Kisumu temple where only one devotee, with the help of the temple authority, distributed over 25,000 books.
Wow.
So there were just two of them. One was pushing the Sankirtan and the other went out and using his intelligence, he placed books in different shops and supermarkets, and that's how the books were getting distributed.
Wow.
So we should not even cry that we don't have enough people. I think we just are not doing it enough.
Okay. So, but you said we don't actually have a firm understanding of our needs, interests, and concerns. So before we can proceed with innovation,
of the audience, of our audience, who we are giving the books to, is it their need to take the book, or is it our need to give them the book? We know they need it, but do they know they need it?
Right.
So how do you create the need?
Okay, so your question is relating to strategy in terms of how you do in-person book distribution.
Yes.
Okay. So all you're saying in terms of innovation, then you're saying how to, if we are to utilize an online platform such as Facebook, so many people are accessing the internet on the continent because of Facebook's Free Basics program. We need to be able to basically package our adverts properly so that we understand their needs, interests, and concerns. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So on that point, Prabhu, in terms of the adverts that you ran on Take a Lot, what kind of adverts did you run? Just before you answer that, Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu, I was reading, there's something quite fascinating. The sun is rising here where I am. And that's why there's this bright light. So I do apologize for that. I just want to maybe shift my camera and see if I can. Okay, no, it's not working out. Okay, I think we'll just have to do it like that. So one thing I was looking into is, you might have heard micro-targeting on Facebook, where you create adverts for different psychologies. So like introverted people, if you create an advert, they will, respond to it. They're likely to respond to that. So an introverted person, if you play on their fear, or at least this is how the micro-targeting in the commercial world is done. And then for extroverted, show people playing in the, field in the sun. So have you ever done adverts like that, on Facebook?
We haven't done adverts like that. we have created some videos on promotions on different books, the Bhagavad Gita, the Science of Self-Realization, some of the cookbooks as well, and those worked really well. And these adverts were then distributed not only on Take Alert, but on different WhatsApp groups and Facebook and the temple social media sites, and it created a stir. And I've noticed that WhatsApp is also a very powerful tool to distribute Prabhupada's books. Where with WhatsApp Business, you can categorize your products, your books, and people just click on your profile and can purchase the books on there as well. So there's just so many different ways. And as the devotees were discussing earlier, we just have to go out and do it.
All right. Okay. So it's time for a Q&A session. So we will have questions pop up on screen, and I'll just, pose them to you to try to tackle. So the first question regarding Prema Vilas Prabhu's comment, with the advent of ebooks and audiobooks, how relevant is printed books? This is from Tumi B. So maybe I'll start with you, Prema Vilas Prabhu. How relevant are ebooks and audiobooks? With the advent of ebooks and audiobooks, how relevant are printed books?
Okay. Actually, very, very nice question. Thank you very much for that. For the recent Bhadra Purnima campaign, I had one of my contacts who already had some version, e-version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or any access on the internet, on database, etc. But still presenting like the potency of having the book. The printed one in one's home, and holding it. It's explaining to that person that this book is not different from the Lord Himself, and this creates another kind of appreciation for the printed book. And I had two contacts like this, and they took the set, and there are still people who are much attached to the printed material. So I think that with these kinds of the e-versions coming up, it may be a challenge for us in the future, but for the moment, we see that people are still appreciating the printed versions of books.
Yes. So the question, so just on the point of audiobooks, BBT Africa has produced some audiobooks. There's one that's completed in Amharic, native language in Ethiopia, On the Way to Krishna. There's also On the Way to Krishna in Review, in Mauritian Creole, and then in Afrikaans, coming back. So will you be distributing, do you have a strategy for distributing these audiobooks to your existing audience? Maybe Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu coming back?
Well, Aghari Prabhu, we're fortunate that the BBT gives us an ebook code on each of the books that are printed now. So with that ebook code, you have your softbound or hardbound book in your hand. And if you like, you can always just download it from the Kindle store, the Apple store, the Google store, whatever it is. So there's no loss. And from previous conferences, we heard His Holiness Jai Betamal state that there is an incline of ebooks worldwide, but definitely the paperback and the hardbound books are definitely here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So yes. That's always interesting to know.
Dwarka Vasini, have you looked at the data for downloads on the the QR codes that are now in the books? Have you ever seen any kind of persons downloading the books that way?
I wouldn't have the data, but what I know is the convenience. Like when you're driving, you'd rather hear an audiobook. Mm-hmm. But when you're home, you want to read from a book. Uh-huh. So I know of devotees or people who actually have audiobooks in their cars. So when they're driving, they're still hearing Bhagavatam or Krishna book or Bhagavad Gita. But when you're home, you actually want a book to hold. And I think I saw a question where they were pointing at the sacredness of having Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. And we know that we usually go and install Bhagavatam sets at home. So there's the whole thing and Aarti and everything, and Krishna has come to your home, all that. That's done with physical books. It can be done with an application on the mobile. But at the same time, when we were in class, like when we were doing Bhakti Vaibhav, we were actually using the app on the phone because it was convenient to use it. So you use both as and when you need.
Okay. Is there anyone who's seen the data? So Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu, in terms of like the number of South Africans or persons you've distributed books to, how many persons have actually downloaded?
I'm not sure, but I do.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
So basically the status quo is that print books are still very relevant, not only for the sacredness, but also just for the feel of the experience that when you're at home, you want to actually, page through a physical book. And then when you're in the car, an audiobook. Speaking on that point, when you're in the car, so the radio actually is the leading media outlet in the African continent. So more so than television and more so than television. So have you ever ran adverts on the radio, for book distribution? Have you ever seen somebody complete a book distribution, somebody, say, oh, I heard this advert via the radio, and then they wanted to, purchase a book?
Well, in Chatsworth, the local radio station that covers the Chatsworth community, we've run adverts there before, and during Gita Week or whether it was Krishna Janmashtami, so we had some success there. And we also have a devotee presenting just before the advert on the particular text to entice the audience. So there is some scope, but in general, radio adverts or television adverts can be a bit pricey, and it's the social media adverts or boosting an ad on Facebook or Instagram is much more cheaper.
Okay. We have like 2 minutes left, but there is one question here about what preaching opportunities can be created by tapping into the cell phone market. So that is by Yashoda Rani. Oh, no minutes left. Okay, so that concludes session 1. Thank you so much, esteemed book distributors and ambassadors of BBT Africa. Vibhu Caitanya Prabhu, thank you so much. Dwarka Vasini Devi, thank you so much. And Prema Vilas Prabhu, thank you so much for this, for helping us begin to actually discuss this topic. So we covered understanding the needs, interests, and concerns of the persons that we are reaching out to. And the main one that we actually need to understand is the youth, because as we know, there's going to be 600 million projected youth. Although a lot of persons have access to the internet, but in-person book distribution is still very much preferred by experienced book distributors. And there has been success in South Africa and other parts of Africa where we've distributed on online platforms. And we also need to try to increase the participation in book distribution, getting devotees more enthused. Festivals such as the monthly Sankirtan Festival, these are more in person. So we live in an age of lockdowns now, so we have to investigate ways on how to keep devotees enthused for participating in book distribution. So thank you so much for your participation, and for all those who are tuned in. So please join the next session on another link. It's published on Facebook or YouTube, where this conference is being streamed. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.